Welcome back to the channel. All right, we are about to do Mystic top 10. It'll really be top 15 with honorable mentions. Champions in the game as we're in June 2024, right? We do the monthly tier list. It's the best tier list in MCoC, especially because of that spreadsheet the spreadsheet wizards have put together for us. And now we're going to cover the Mystic champions, right? We do this every single June. Thank you, huge thank you to Egatron for putting together the votes and tabulating them from the Discord server's rankings. We will now cut to the clip that explains how the rankings are done, what we do every single month for the monthly tier list, myself and the MCoC Illuminati and the spreadsheet wizards. And then we will jump straight into my Discord server's rankings and then my rankings as well. Let's get to it. All right, let's jump into this very quickly. And remember, if you've already seen how this format works, go ahead and just jump to the timestamp that I've listed in the description. You can get right to the rankings. Now, this is how we've broken down every single champion, rated them. This is when I talk about the thoroughness, the hours, the debating, going back and forth. It is a lot of fun, but this is how we do it. And then this is how they're all scored. And every month that is presented in the general tier list. We've been doing this for, I think, 4 years now. So let's go over this, and this is how they're going to be listed now. There are four categories. They're not equally weighted, but there are four general categories. There's ease of use, battlegrounds, war, and general. And then general is an added up score of those other four categories. And we'll talk about them when we get to them. Ease of use, this is worth about 3 points. This is the epitome of it, is Sunspot. I know often we think of like our parry heavy champions, like an Archangel being the easiest to use. And I'm not saying they're not, but we are including champions like Sunspot, phenomenal champion, not a knock on him. And in fact, I know many players like the spreadsheet because they can configure it for ease of use, even though I always present it every month without ease of use. For the sake of these rankings here in June, we will be including ease of use. Moving on to Battlegrounds, this is worth 10 points. And you see my Battlegrounds rankings every single month. We've been doing that since before Battlegrounds even came out. We're now adding even the scores so you can see them. Photon is a 10 out of 10 in the dual threat category. She's a very good defender, a menacing defender. There are some very good counters for her though. If you pull Photon, someone pulls a Mantis, you throw her on attack, and there's a lot of meta defenders that she is very, very good for. So she's the perfect example of a 10 out of 10 in Battlegrounds. Moving on to War. War is in an interesting place, and I won't take too much time for this, for that discussion in this. But in War, the relevance really there was outside of sagas, outside of metas and these sorts of things, attacker tactic, defender tactics. Who are the champions? Who are the few champions that when you're in tier 1, you're 2, you're really pushing, I don't know, tier 3. Who are the champions that are almost always someone you're looking to assign? Yes, there's going to be times in metas and defenders, things like that, can X them out. But some champions just flat are more usable than others in War, and Tiger is definitely the 10 out of 10, at least for now, in War. That's an example of that. Now moving on to General, you have a total score of 15. This is the biggest because I know not everyone does War, I know not everyone does Battlegrounds, but everyone plays the game. And this is broken down into long form. You can get up to 3 points for this. This is the most heavily weighted on Necropolis. We've had like all the various of Legends content, and of course Grandmaster's Gauntlet, and then now there's the EOP and things like that. All of them are going to be presenting different challenges, defenders, node sets, trap nodes, and those sorts of things. And then of course, like in EOP, there's even our hashtag objectives and things like that. But there are champions that we can say, especially looking at Necropolis, just appear to be better in long form than others. You think of your Kate Bishop, Wong, Aegon, Shuri, those sorts of things. Champions have all been rated across there for their ability to ramp up and then maintain that ramp. You think of like Dani Moonstar, she can do massive damage after a ramp, but it starts all over. Very rarely you're going to be using her for your long form, maybe an EOP sort of thing. Probably not in the Necropolis or the next version of Necropolis when it comes out. Moving on to Flow. Spider-Ham is the epitome of this. In fact, it's when I came up with the term flows, when I first covered him years ago when he came into the game. I'm going to read it to you. How well do a champion's abilities and specials fit together? How easily does a node or a defender or an AI throw off the attacker? How relevant is that in today's game? Example is Spider-Ham is a 5 out of 5. I literally came up with this term and this definition because it is different than ease of use with Spider-Ham. You need a power sting, he's got it. He can apply them without even needing power. You need a taunt, he's got one for you. You need an evade, it's available. All of his specials do something, they help him out. You land the heavy to keep his spider nonsense high. You gotta play him well. I don't have him as a 3 out of 3 ease of play. He's high though. but it's his flow, in my opinion, his flow and his budget and his meta that make him so incredibly powerful. Moving on to budget. This is also worth 5 points. How many relevant abilities and immunities are in the champion's kit? Utility brought to a fight, and also damage is part of this. So yes, you may not have the most utility, but if you got enough damage, you're gonna get at least a decent score of this. Hercules, right? You want him to crit? He can crit. You want big crits? He can do that too. You want to go unblockable? He can do that. Yeah, you got to get close to death, but still, he can do it. He can just do so many things. He has relevant resistances. He's a phenomenal champion. His synergies are great. 5 out of 5 budget. Everything that could be packed into one single champion and still be in this game is there. 5 out of 5 budget. There are a few other 5 out of 5s, but Herc is my favorite example of it. Meta, this is the one that we really need to stay on top of. Really, when we're talking often, if you see me promote or demote a champion, or when I come out a little bit like hesitant or conservative on them when they're new, it's their meta score that's quote unquote holding them back or moving them up, because I'm just not sure how they're going to be used. And then as time shifts on, some champions become better in the meta and some become worse. Like CGR's meta score has actually gone up as late. We've talked about that a lot on this channel. And if you think about Hulkling, I actually talked about on stream today, he came out as a penny counter. But he was so good and across so many ways, and some of it's flow and some of it's budget too, that he's not just for your tech champions. Like if you think about future Ant-Man, he happens to have a Pierce. So a lot of your tech champions who are problematic, Iron Man Infinity War is coming back, well, Hulkling can go unblockable. But he's also then good outside of that. He's got his resistances, or I'm sorry, he's got his immunities and those sorts of things. But Onslaught comes out very problematic defender, no like seemingly hard counters outside of Havoc necessarily, but people were using Hulkling for Onslaught. He's just so meta relevant. This can shift. This is the one that we're always keeping our eye on and why champions get promoted and demoted. Hopefully you have a really good understanding of how the tier list works, the scoring and all of that. Or my server's rankings. I'm so glad that we were able to put this together. Like Egatron, I cannot thank you enough, Aiden. And thank you to everyone who voted. The one thing I'll call out that's really just really different from what you're going to see when myself and the Illuminati's rankings come up is Diablo. And I don't know why. Actually, I probably will go back and ask my server, like, do they just not like him? I'm not sure what it is. And then also White Tiger. I have a feeling in both cases it's going to be something we've talked about throughout this. It's kind of that transition period between 6 and 7 stars, right? Like, we'll talk about it when we get to White Tiger and my knowledge set on. And then Diablo, I do have Diablo. I have him at 7-star rank 2. I was very fortunate to pull him when that crystal came out at the end there of December. And you know what? Let's talk about him when we get to it. Let's go and get to my rankings with the Illuminati. All right, this is the number 10 champion, right, in our rankings here. And I said we would talk about her and Diablo a little bit, but before we do, I want to call out honorable mentions. And these are also close. Again, if you follow the way we do the rankings and the rating system, you'll see why 1 point makes a massive difference and why they can end up being so many ties. So honorable mention, and it makes sense for me if any player really thinks they deserve to be in there. Longshot, Rintra, Sasquatch, Dragonman, Kindred, Wong, and Wiccan. And I think a lot of it's going to have to do with how you're playing the game, who you've pulled, and how you're playing the game. What modes are super important to you? And then, of course, who do you enjoy? Mystic is a very diverse class, incredibly powerful. And I believe probably my favorite class in the game. There was a long period of time where they absolutely definitely were, but the other classes have come a long way as far as like being unique and originality and that sort of thing. So let's go ahead and get into White Tiger. Now, I've talked to you about this, and we did this when we did the best champions of 2024. I actually don't have her as a 7-star. I do have her as a 6-star, I believe, somewhere in there. And I see the power that she has. But when I go through using my resources like efficiently and what I'm trying to do, it just didn't make sense for me to rank her up as a 6. I don't think she's one of those like broken, OP, 6-star champions, have to have, shuts down this, and this, got to get her, rank her up, and ascend her unless you just really, really enjoy playing her. I'm going to wait for the 7. I want to get her. I will be happy to get her out of a Titan. I would really love to come out of July 4th with her as one of my pulls from the Titan. I'm assuming there's going to be a few Titan crystals for me to open. And so here's what I'll say, and I know this about her, is that she has Nullify Immunity. Really, really unique in this class. She has Bleed. Again, incredibly unique out of the Mystic class. Bleeding damage, right? She has a power steal, and then she has that fear mechanic, which is new, which is like turning off the unblockable or things like that. And then if you have the awakened ability and you get that high end, she actually can become a difficult defender with that massive, massive power gain as her or the opponent gets near death. Kind of seems like for attack wise, it's a bit of a finishing move kind of mechanic. And as a defender, obviously that can be very, very problematic. Let's go ahead and move on to a tie at the number 8 spot. Now we've got the Hood, and this is one of those champions where I in no way think he is broken, and I actually don't even think he's necessarily OP. But the way the game has developed, he's one that I wonder when we're going to see a 7-star. I don't think it's a case of never as a 7-star. I just think it's how far is coming. I'm going to wait for the game to develop. How big are they going to wait for defenders and things like this? These relationships between Mystic and Cosmic before they release him. I am not surprised that we haven't seen him. I think he probably comes before Clairvoyant, but I think they're on a similar track. All right, let's go and start and talk about what makes Hood so unique. It really has a unique damage source or mechanic with the whole bullets and things, detonating with the heavy. We've talked about, you don't need to let everything build up and get one big, massive detonation. It does look really fun, but you don't need to do that. There's no massive benefit to it in your default fights. But he has the Fate Seal off the SB2. It's not as blunt force powerful as Clairvoyant's buff immunity. Right? That's an interesting one, and that's time for another discussion for another video. But it is incredibly powerful, and it does shut down some powerful defenders. Additionally, he can reduce all ability accuracy, not just defensive ability accuracy, but all defensive ability accuracy by 65%. It's not 100%, of course, but that is a lot, and for it to cover all ability accuracy is kind of a big deal. And then, of course, he has the stagger as well, so he's handling buffs very uniquely in a variety of ways. And then with, like I said, with the Fate Seal being as powerful and as unique as it is, I can see why it's taking some time for him to come to the game. And then with the Mist mechanic, that is incredibly powerful because it gives you openings in a game that often they choose to punish us for blocking, right? That's a technique, right, with the Pierce and these sorts of things. Mist allows you just to get around that, to create your own openings. It's a very, very powerful character. I don't have him on the never 7-star list, but I do have him on the I'm not surprised it's taking so long list. Let's go ahead and match him up with who he's tied with for the 8th spot. Diablo got one of the buffs of all time. Immediately propelled himself into the conversation for top Mystic champion. And I think it makes a lot of sense. One of the biggest uniquenesses for him in the Mystic class is that he's not only a champion who can run recoil, but actually definitely benefits. I've done videos showing that I think you don't need, but to really get good results out of him, yeah, you want to run recoil and Mystic Dispersion, but you could run recoil or you could run Mystic Dispersion, still get fantastic results. So he doesn't need them, but he does benefit from them significantly. With all of this healing, he can heal it back. And he has tremendous healing capabilities, again, even without recoil. Now, he has those pre-fights, right? Which can make it so he can even go immune to stun and armor break. Armor break, not that unusual for the Mystic class, but I do think the stun is very, very cool. And then, of course, he has the nullify, and then just massive, massive poison damage for the Mystic class. Again, just a champion that is very rare, very unique, in a class that has a lot of versatility, and then can run the recoil tree and is available as a 7-star. I think the only reason why we saw on my Discord servers list and why we're not seeing a ton of videos on him is because just not that many people have him 7-star. I happen to be fortunate enough to have him as a 7, and it's one of those videos where I don't know why I haven't made it yet. I've had footage for a very, very long time, and maybe this will inspire me to get it done. Probably when I get back from vacation, because he is one of my favorite champions to use. I'm not actually someone who typically runs recoil, so I'm often running him without it. The ability to heal back, the ability to do massive damage, the ability to do poison damage, and the ability to go stun immune. He's fantastic, and I don't think he's falling off at all. I think it's just a matter of not many people have him as a 7-star. All right, let's go and move on to the number 7 champion. All right, coming in at number 7, and number 7 on their own. And I know a lot of you are probably going to be like, what? You're insane. He should be higher. And you know what? I've seen the videos too. And I think in certain modes and certain fights, I get it. He's just getting around the problem. I'm honestly a little surprised he did not get nerfed when it was his rebalancing. Because if you read through his post, look at this. I mean, I think he was designed to be an easier to use defender. And the damage, though, is insane off of this guy. I think when they were designing him, I think they just didn't realize how big those ruptures were going to get, how bursty this character was, and it's not surprising, right? Like we talk about power gain. I talk about that so much on this channel. When a champion has that, they've got me interested. They've got my attention now. I want to know the rest. I don't have them as 7. This is like White Tiger. Like I want to get them as a 7, and I will rank them up and play them and do videos on them because they look like a blast. I ban them all the time in Battlegrounds because I don't want to deal with them. I see him getting around and taking out onslaughts. I see him taking serpents. I see him doing a ton of things. You get your power gain. MSD has done a great video on how to play him very well and how to utilize, I think it's called the howling mechanic. And then, I mean, I've seen it myself in videos and had opponents do it to me. Like his ability to do significant, we're talking like 350,000 damage in a very short period of time without class advantage. This isn't to cosmic champions. I think that's one of the things to really keep in mind here is this is against like Onslaught, right? He's a fantastic champion. I can't wait to get him, rank him up myself. Bitter Steel did videos on him. I remember him talking about him after the brawl. Very, very excited about the pup here. Very much the number 7. And, you know, I would say he's going to move up. But when you see the champions above him, who is he replacing? Coming in at a tie for number 5 is none other than the one champion I got to design all by myself. Okay, that's not true. I was just a helper in the design process from Daddy Longlegs, my long-term friend, DLL. We've been playing this game together since War Season number 1. And yes, I'm going to continue to mention it because it is like a video game player's dream come true to get to be part of literally anything, much less part of designing something like this. A phenomenal, amazing champion. He absolutely crushed it out of the park. She has dual immunities with the bleed and the incinerate. He managed to encapsulate and combine the powers and the feel of a sorcerer, right? These champions with blessings and things like that, with Ghost Rider, right? She has the spirit of vengeance. Amazing story. I won't spoil the comics for you though, but she has the ability to do massive incinerate damage off of her SP1 if they can be nullified, they being the opponent, or if they can be incinerated. If they can't, then you go to your SP2 for the Soul Barb, and if both of those can land, you want to go back and forth between the two of them. I've done a ton of videos on how to play her, long form, short form, war, battlegrounds, metas that help her, metas that work against her, and lo and behold, every single one of these is with a 7-star that's not awakened. So she's only going to get better in certain scenarios and better with her pause mechanic on her blessings when she is awakened. I will say she's not the easiest to use. She is not. But if a player of my skill can learn to use her pretty well, I really think you can. It will take time. You're going to want to get her blessings down. You're going to learn how to well-timed block, how to heavy, and then the intercept, and then how to manage the 3 of them together because they increase her ability accuracy and make it so she's not a bad domino counter and can take champions like Maestro and Future Ant-Man because she can get her the ability accuracy of her effects, I believe it is, up, allowing you to land those debuffs that you're looking to land. And then the awakened ability, if you get her a high enough sig, is going to help you, at least against Cosmics, in fights where they are shrugging her debuffs due to the node or something like that. She is a phenomenal Battlegrounds champion. She can be a great war champion. And then, of course, she is amazing in questing as well. I could talk about Kushala for hours, but we need to move on. Let's see who she is tied with at the number 5 spot. All right, this big boy. Now, keep in mind that when he was buffed, the buff landed flat. People were saying he was terrible, he was no good. It was an example of, and pointed to, why the buff program was not good anymore. Now, we've covered him, and I was like, no, he's pretty good. There's something here. I don't know what exactly, but there's something here. And, you know, he didn't have a lot of the standard Mystic characteristics, right? Like, there was no power control and things like that. And I think this was an interesting time in the game. So I really understand why we all slept on his buff so hard. Then Aiden, Egatron, the person who's been helping me out so much with all this, used him in Battlegrounds in my first Vega Battlegrounds tournament championship. It kind of opened up a lot of eyes. And then we started seeing him more and more, and we started realizing the Fury off that SP2 when he's in his damage mode, I can't think of what it's called, right? But when he's got all the unstoppables, That is a massive Fury. And then it's got the physical burst, which is not something we typically see off of Mystics anyway. Well, fast forward to now, and he is probably the most dominant Battlegrounds attacker, most meta shaping and shifting Battlegrounds attacker in the game. There might be others out there, but I think they're not available 7 stars, at least off the top of my head. And this guy is, which means you better get used to Juggernaut. I like openly lament that I don't have a 7 star. Now, I'm the stubborn one for not ranking up my 6 star. I still don't have him ascended and things like that. So that's my own fault. There's only so much I can complain. But at every deck I run into, there's like a 7 star unawakened Juggernaut sitting at the bottom of it, right? That's hiding because of his PI being so low and things like that. But here's the other thing. He's actually a blast in questing. Yeah, your more complex quests, like, he's not as good. And that's why you see him tied. Because this is a Battlegrounds tier list, like we do every single month. You've seen him, and you've seen him up there at the top of it for a very long time. And we're reflecting everything in the game here. And not everyone loves Battlegrounds. He can be used in war, but you're going to want him at the highest rank and rarity possible. And when you do, you can get amazing results because the damage is that good. And then I've done the video on it, pair him up with his own relic and his kind of aggressive hitting into block playstyle, like hitting into your block to utilize his intercept with his unstoppable. You can mitigate a lot of that damage with his relic. He's fantastic. He's phenomenal. I can't wait till I get my own. There's 3 Mystics here. I'm like, I don't have them as 7 stars. I can't wait to get them. I'm not going to be able to rank them all up at once, but I hope I have that problem of trying to decide who to awaken. All right, let's go ahead and move on to what is actually a 4-way tie for first. It's how the scores turned out. And when I analyze them from different angles, I completely understand. Like I said, this is a 4-way tie for first. And because all these champions are so different, this is what I'm talking about with the Mystic class. Like, in my opinion, this is likely the most diverse class. Like, has the biggest range of what you now think of when you think of a champion from the class. Like, abilities to pull from, or what they excel in, or things like that. I love this class for that reason. Now, Tigra does have a high summoner skill ask, and it's not just how to play her. It's literally like spacing with every single defender. But we see new defenders come out, and you can tell Kabama's like tried to make it so you can't Tigra her, and players still find a way. Which came into the game, she was not a hit. Like, initially on release, in fact, a lot of people were like, she's going to be too complicated, and basically the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, was the thought. And I can totally see why. Her playstyle was it's like something we had never seen before, like causing these misses and diving into specials and crouching down with your heavy and then releasing it and keeping up the 2, I can't think what she called stances, essentially. They're not called stances for her. But the burst damage, the ruptured damage that she gets going is like maybe unparalleled, although Werewolf is doing some nutty stuff too. Between her 2 stances, right, she can get those really big power gains going and things like that. I think the thing that's going to hold her back, you've heard me talk about this, but it's not happening yet, that's for sure, is that I don't think she's coming as a 7 star. I really believe this is a champion that we aren't seeing for quite a long time. For sure, because of kind of what I said is she's able to just get around things, right? This is similar like what we talked about with Valkyrie and other champions where they just don't have to deal with the problem that was clearly presented by the node of the defender. And that's because their mechanics allow them to just be like, I'm not going to deal with that, and I'm still going to do tremendous damage. She has the lowest ease of use score of all 4 of these champions here that are tied for number 1. So without that, she ends up being number 1 on her own. She's fantastic. She's phenomenal. I mean, I'm curious what you think. Do you think we ever see a 7-star Tigra? I don't think we do. Or if we do, we're well into 8 stars by then. All right, let's move on to the other champion tied for first. Dr. Doom is potentially the most broken of champions in the game. I think it's him, Hercules, Fury, and maybe Ghost. The thing with Ghost is you can tell Ghost had like a built-in weakness. Like I think they were trying very much to say like when she has armor broken, she's just not going to function. Doom, Fury, and Hercules, like you could tell there's multiple layers of like kind of protecting their loop or whatever. And Doom is the epitome of that. He had so many abilities to getting into the Doom loop, right? You get to the heavy, and then it's like medium, medium, light, 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 medium, medium, and the opponent is passively stunned during this time. Meanwhile, you are, I think it's stealing their power. So not only are they losing power, but you are gaining it. You're getting to your fury. I mean, he's great. Don't get me wrong. And I remember using him in Abyss of Legends and just having an absolute blast with it. He's incredibly, incredibly tanky with like his crit resistance, which makes him a pain to fight, but also incredibly forgiving to use. So many fights where like I would just mess up time and time again, but due to his tankiness and then his ability to just grasp a fight and completely neuter the opponent, right? Without their power, they can't do anything, and they're often stunned, and I'm just constantly hitting my buttons for combos into specials. So they're, even if they did gain power, even if somehow they were immune to that, like that's the thing that started to happen is nodes and defenders started to come out that felt clearly trying to stop Doom, but he had so many abilities in his kit to help him get to his ultimate spots of getting to the Fury and then annihilating you with a special too, that even if you took away one or two of those abilities, he still had plenty of options. Yeah. I think the only reason why he's not number one all by himself anymore on this list, and it is not due to not being a 7-star, it's because Battlegrounds exists, and that is part of the rating system, as hopefully you've heard at least once. He's a little bit slow for that. And the only reason he's a little bit slow for that is he seems designed to get to the really fun Doom loop of the special 3, and then get your Fury, and then get to your special 2. And before Battlegrounds was a very mature mode that it is now, Doom was still considered a really good option for Battlegrounds, not only for his defensive prowess, but his offense as well. He's really an interesting one to like kind of look back and see, because Battlegrounds didn't exist when he came into the game. But something tells me that if he had, he would have gotten into that Fury a lot faster. Like he would have started off with like half of it, and then this first special 3 would have like doubled it or something like that. That way you could have just gone straight to your special 2 and Doom slapped your opponent. It's cool. And it's cool because it's Doom, but it is kind of funny to look at these champions and try to explain why Doom is not number one by himself, like light years ahead. And yet he kind of is in a way. It just depends on what modes you're evaluating most. If Battlegrounds isn't your thing, he's the best. All right. Let's move on to the 2 last champions tied for number 1. Okay, frequent viewers have heard me for quite a while say America Chavez, in my opinion, is the most relevant Mystic champion in the game, particularly because we are continuing to move more and more to a pure 7-star meta, right? Not just Battlegrounds, not just War, but questing as well. Like we saw that in the Act 9 beta. It has continued to happen, and it makes sense. The game moves on, it evolves. Now, if that's not where you're playing yet, totally cool. Totally makes sense. And if you're ranking up 6 stars, I think go with your Doom. I'd go with your Chavez if you like her, right? And if you have her 7, absolutely go with it. But as the game continues to evolve, and I think we're not seeing Doom, we're not seeing Tiger, and you'll see who the other champion is when we get to the final tie for number 1. Only one of them is available as a 7-star. And she is incredibly relevant. I think she was the first champion I got to cover. It was either her or Hercules. I don't remember who came out first when I was in the CCP. And I was so excited about it. And I still am. And she fell a little flat. And I remember kind of like talking with the designer and asking questions. And I was still learning a lot about the game, just like I am now. But I didn't know as much as I did now. And it was trying to, as nicely as possible, kind of ask him, like, why? Why not more? Like, she, like, I see the power, but she's not hitting hard enough. And for those of you who don't know, like, the whole idea behind her is she's not, especially at the time, not your typical mystic. Like, she's not stealing the power or absorbing it or whatever the term is. I can't remember. She's not nullifying any buffs. She's supposed to get stronger with the buffs. But what happened was, or is, yes, she could reverse ability power rate, which was great. But you still needed to hit the opponent. So they were still getting their combat power rate, which meant they were then still getting to their specials. And because she was hitting so softly, over time, like, if you weren't playing perfectly, you would start taking lots of damage because they weren't getting their power. And the fights just took so long because she hit so weak. Like I remember there was a lane that was clearly designed for a Mystic with her capabilities, and I tried to use it on stream, and it just was taking forever. So I brought in Spider-Man 2099, and he like dominated it. You know, similar ability to handle ability power rate. And I talked to the designer a little bit, and they kind of essentially said, in essence, look, the concern is if we make her stronger, we might make her broken. And, you know, then the buff program came, you know, clearly, I think a couple of years later, because I can see she came out in July of 2021. And I think they did a great job because I do not consider her broken. I do not consider her broken. Like, if they want to shut her down, they can. But boy, oh boy, can she cross a lot of matchups. And part of that is due to what she does with buffs, right? That's part of why Mystics are so strong, because they interact with buffs, and buffs aren't only on Cosmics. They're also on Defenders and other classes too. But because she powers up so much from them, she can end fights fast, and it makes her very relevant in Battlegrounds. I covered that like from the day one I was able to test her buffs. I was like, I think we got a Battlegrounds monster. And then I've used her throughout Tier 1 War. Like, I believe at least one of the seasons we got top 3. I was using America Chavez. I have so many war videos on that. She was great in Necropolis. She wasn't as dominant as like Kate Bishop or Shuri, but she definitely was usable. She's been good in some Spring of Sorrow and, you know, whatever those quests are called, whatever you want to call them. But basically, essentially our Everest sort of quest. She's can get going, and she can just shut down the ability power rate of a champion. You know, she was able to take out the Airwalker in Necropolis by getting him into the corner and just keeping him there. She's amazing. I will continue to put out videos on her. As many as you all want to see, I am happy to put out. And I still have not gotten out my like super amazing, like probably going to be 30, 40, 50 minutes highlights of America Chavez fights. I've taken her to rank 3. In my opinion, she is the best Mystic available as a 7-star. Juggernaut is a better Battlegrounds attacker. I don't even know if Kushala is. She's also a decent defender, and she's phenomenal at questing. In my opinion, she's the number 1. All right, let's move on to our number 1 on this list. All right, I imagine a lot of you, as I was talking about America Chavez, were able to figure out that number 1 must be Absorbing Man, especially with not being available as a 7-star. I think we eventually get him. I do. I just think it's going to be a while. And a lot of that is due because of, in my opinion, how much he charges up in some of his like ideal matches. And I think they want to give Terrax a little time. Terrax is like, come on, let me have some time without Absorbing Man around. Where's Carl? And, you know, and how much he does handle those hazard shift lanes for us. Now, also, I've noticed that Immortal Abomination has not come out yet as the 7-star. So let's keep our eye on that one as well, right? They're nice travel partners as far as adding that poison immunity to Absorbing Man. And then, of course, what makes Absorbing Man so incredibly unique in this class is his immunities. And what makes him relevant, what makes him usable. And when we talk about essentially the budget score, it is your utility, but it's combined with damage. You can have all the utility in the world, but if you don't have enough damage, you essentially end up with Cap Sam Wilson. Like, yes, I get it. And yes, he can do adequate damage at a high enough sig, and he's got so much utility. I see why his damage is low. But the fact of the matter is, the way we play the game and the way the players look at things, if the champion doesn't have enough damage, we're often going to go and look for other tools for the job. Because they do. And essentially, Absorbing Man is a great blend of having enough utility to be able to be used in a wide variety of sets, and then have the damage to back it up. If he was to come out as a 7-star, I don't know. I don't know if it'd be him or America Chavez, but I do think they would be alone. And I think as time goes on, and as Tiger and Doom don't come out as 7-stars, I do think America will become the number 1. I have a feeling this will happen in December of this year, just as 7-star rank 3s become more and more of a thing. And as I don't believe we're seeing Tiger or Doom, and I'd be shocked if we see Carl by December of this year. As usual, let me know what you think we got right. Let me know what you think we got wrong. Make sure you check the playlist and catch every single top 10. And then, of course, the top 30 overall. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.